Just double checking, Umi, you can see that okay?
Yes, I can see that clearly.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so thank you to those who've joined us this morning. I want to share with you some of the findings from a recent survey of the second year cohort at Queen's University. And I want to unpack some of their experiences of student stress, and more importantly, how they're coping with that and how that's kind of impacting on their course satisfaction, their mental health, and their learning motivation, and how that, are there some kind of tips we can take from how students have managed this during the pandemic that we could take with us post-pandemic? So you may be a student at university at the moment, you may be thinking of going to university, and the idea is there might be some tips that we can take from those who've been through the challenges of the last year or so that we might be able to take on board and use going forward. I put my email address on the slide. I'm more than happy, Umi, to share this PowerPoint. There's some links in it for other resources that students might find useful. Okay, so I surveyed this second year group. I asked them to rate the kind of experiences they were going through at university, both in terms of the challenges that they interpreted as uplifting, that helped them, but also that may have been overwhelming or a disappointment, a hassle. And students also completed measures on personality, on aspects of coping, such as control and support, and they measured a range of different aspects of well-being or factors that can impact on their well-being too, like learning motivation and course satisfaction. Okay, so I know that I'm not talking to a group of researchers here. This is the one of the results. We call it a regression when we're doing these types of analyses. This is a slightly easier version of that same table to look at. So you can see in this example that the outcome measure, the thing I was looking at, was course satisfaction. And in the end, I found that there were a number of gradients that influenced students' course satisfaction. And if it's positive, it means that as one goes up, so as conscientiousness increases, course satisfaction increases. If it's negative, for example, the more students felt they lacked mojo, lack of motivation, then as that went up, course satisfaction went down. That's what we mean by negative. So I want to tell you a story, an interpretation around these key influences here for course satisfaction, for mental health, the next one, and for learning motivation as well. So lack of motivation, it was a factor in the analysis with course satisfaction. It was a much bigger factor when it came to looking at mental health, that feeling of lack of mojo, lack of motivation, largely due to the challenges of having to study remotely and study in isolation. And at Queen's, the policy we took was to provide students with almost weekly tsunamis of pre-recorded material that they had to kind of go through to keep on top of their studies, rather than having everything in a live virtual format. They had some of that for lab classes and some of that for tutorials and seminars, but all their lectures were delivered through pre-recorded material. And the upshot is for students at Queen's and most students worldwide, that isolation combined with a lack of motivation that often can kind of creep up and bite all of us from time to time. All of us occasionally fall victim to some level of procrastination. So the takeaway here is that procrastination combined with the COVID restrictions, it kind of created a perfect storm to kind of challenge students' ability to feel motivated. Nevertheless, some did find a formula, and what seemed to be important was conscientiousness. Now, in the research literature, we tend to find that people are more extroverted. I did measure these different aspects of personality, and we find that people that are more extroverted tend to be happier. Their well-being is greater. Their motivation tends to be higher. They tend to be more satisfied. Interestingly, in this analysis, extroversion didn't have that kind of benefit. It wasn't observed. And I suspect that's probably because of the enforced isolation. You just, if you were extroverted by nature, you just didn't have the same opportunity to benefit in the way you might in a normal situation, pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, from those kind of in-person contacts. So I suspect that's why extroversion didn't feature in this analysis. It isn't as important as other ingredients in coping during a pandemic and probably post-pandemic too. I suspect that extroversion will begin to pay dividends after the pandemic, when people can have in-person contacts. And the good news is, if you're an introvert like me, then actually you can get the same kind of benefits by faking being an extrovert for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes once a week. So try that post-pandemic with friends, push yourself out there, perform a little bit, you'll get the same health benefits that those extroverts get. Nevertheless, in this analysis, conscientiousness was key. And what we mean by conscientiousness, it's not just that kind of commitment to work hard. It's not just that kind of diligence, that drive to want to do the best you can. And I have to say, generally in the research literature, it's not talent, it's not intelligence that are the best predictors of success, it's conscientiousness. If you got that dogged determination to do your best, then that usually means success will follow. So it's a commitment to work hard, but really what gives that conscientiousness teeth is that you drill down on the skill set you need to succeed as a student in higher education. And there are a number of skills that we teach our students very quickly in the first semester. And some students really, those that are conscientiousness, really know this is important, and they work very hard to try and get their stall set up in terms of, for example, honing their skills in time management. And I've put a link here to a lovely bit of software by Kent University, where you can kind of, you can plug in when's the assignment due, what's the type of the assignment, how long is the assignment, when was the, when did you put that assignment in, when's the assignment date. So you get that kind of time period. Is it a report? Is it an essay? And what the toolkit will do, it will suggest to you when you should be working on different bits of that assignment. It kind of creates this virtual time management grid to kind of nudge you to start working on it. And I've put another link here for strategies for effective note-taking. We find that students that are conscientious and diligent, then they know these skills are important. These are higher education skills. And what I've put in bold here, these are other parts of the formula that we see as higher education learning and thinking skills: being able to search the literature, reference properly, break down assignments, develop this kind of academic writing style, being able to critically evaluate research. Students who do really well, they don't know lots more psychology than students who might get a C or a 2-2. But what they are good at doing is they're good at doing the kind of critical thinking side of it. They're good at critiquing theories and studies. They're good at dipping into different areas of psychology and showing how it's relevant for a particular area. We call that being eclectic. They can offer practical applications, and sometimes there's originality in the approach they take. Now, those points I've put in the brackets, this is the marking scheme that markers have when they're assessing assignments and reports. This is the kind of winning formula. And students that are conscientiousness, then they really kind of drill down, okay, what's the formula? What do I need to understand, and what skills do I need to develop? Another finding from that early kind of circle with the kind of little clouds next to it, where we had those kind of correlations I mentioned from the regression, intellectual stimulation was there. And we find that the more students rated the demands as intellectually stimulated, the resources they were having to, their learning resources, the lectures, the pre-recorded lectures, the in-person tutorials that were done virtually, the more they rated the course as intellectually stimulating, as an uplift, then that was positively associated with course satisfaction. Now, this probably reflects two things. One, the faculty, the staff spent an awful lot of time preparing the resources for students in terms of pre-recorded short bite-sized videos. We really didn't get a summer before the pandemic. We would just spent all our time preparing these resources for our students that were then kind of drip fed to the students over their first and second semester. So I think that the hard work of the faculty might be part of that explanation for why students rated the learning resources as uplifting. Another factor that's in that is I think it reflects the particular outlook of some students, that they have this optimistic outlook. And a useful tip for in life as a student and in other areas, that if you're faced with situations that you really can't control, and we can't control what happened with the pandemic, if you have a terminal illness, and it's just going to gradually lead to a decline in health, and there's no choice about that. There's no cure for it. There's no treatment. What we find is those patients who take an optimistic, which seems strange, but what I mean by that is they just home in on the positives in terms of what they can do. So my mother had a profound brain hemorrhage 20 years ago that left her very disabled, but she is an excellent, she's lived long past the expectation of somebody with the illness that she was suffered from. And part of her formula is that, you know, when I go and see her, she will talk about how nice the weather is today. She'll talk about the good things, the small things that, you know, are good a part of her life. So the idea is in defensive optimism, that's where you more readily tune into the things that are positive over the things that are negative. It's a bias towards remembering better, homing in more on the positives over the negatives. And we find that's true in most areas, especially in those areas where you can't control the outcome. So our students, for example, typically they're getting these waves of resources that they have to kind of wade through every week. And they're doing this at home, alone, in their bedrooms, often on the computer, isolated. And these are typically some of their kind of responses that fit well with defensive optimism. So they say, I can go over the learning points until I get my head around them. They've got pre-recorded bits. So they say that I can fast forward. I can fast forward to the bits that I want to. I can study at my own pace. I can set up, the setup has forced me to be better organized. I'm understanding the points better than I did last year. So these were responses from our students that all echo this kind of defensive optimism outlook. And actually, in the UK, all universities, the students complete what's called a national student survey, and university league tables are largely driven by where universities sit on this national student survey, how well they are rated by their students. And during that pandemic year, Queen's University, the School of Psychology, its national student ratings went up by 6%, which is remarkable given this is students studying remotely during the pandemic. Another ingredient that you should think about doing, and we know this in psychology, is we learn about what are called primes. Now, primes are bits of information out there that we may be aware of, we may not be aware of, but they can prompt our thinking and our behavior. They can nudge us. And we should use primes, now we know about psychology, to kind of create a workspace that helps us. So, for example, having your desk that's pretty clear, having the material that's on the desk is only the most immediate task to hand, having natural daylight coming in, having a clock so that you can see how long you need to work before you need to take a break, or you've earned your break. Using task lists. Task lists are wonderful, where you list all the jobs you need to do and you tick them off as you're going through. This sense of being productive is important. And they're all examples of primes that can nudge you into that effective work mindset and help battle that kind of procrastination that affects us all from time to time. Now, support usually is one of those powerful ingredients in managing stress. It featured in this analysis, but it featured as a hassle, not as an uplift. And in part, that reflects the frustrations probably students experienced as they were trying to study remotely. rather than in person. And there may well be some mixed experience in the virtual kind of learning with teachers, depending on the teachers they were going through. It was a learning experience for teachers too. The bottom line is that going forward, we hope that in-person, face-to-face experience is the mainstay of teaching in the future, but it's quite likely we'll keep some elements of virtual learning. So some blended approach is likely to be there. And the tip I would recommend to students and my colleagues is to encourage as much face-to-face contact as possible. The moment you turn your cameras off, you put yourself on the fringe of the learning opportunity that takes place in that virtual environment. And we know that actually there are parts of the brain that are designed that light up when you try to process multi-sensory information. When you see something and you hear the person, you know, that visual and the auditory information, there are different parts of the brain that light up when you have this multi-sensory processing. If your camera's off, then the other learners are missing out on that opportunity. And we have this thing called the animacy effect. We're hardwired in an evolutionary basis to tune into movement. And we're empathetic creatures. We connect with others. And so being able to see them is really important. So an important message for all of us is when we're engaged in online virtual learning, that you do as much of this as you can with your cameras on. And for students, we encourage our students, they have 1 week with their tutors every week, and then the other week is where they work virtually in groups. And we encourage them to, when they are meeting virtually, get those cameras on, because it's really powerful. You know, make the learning experience a little bit easier for you. This is the second one, looking at GHQ is mental health. So this is the regression model, and this is the simpler version of this, where we're looking at the different influences that impacted on mental health. And again, that when I said earlier about lack of motivation, then this was the strongest influence of adverse mental health. And we have other ingredients in the mix here. So just to go through these fairly quickly. In the analysis looking at mental health, it was the case that those who were anxious prone, we call this neuroticism. It doesn't mean clinically neurotic, it just means that they're worry prone. That those students that were anxious prone, they were especially impacted by the changes of the pandemic. And for students going to university for the first time, even students who might not normally be very anxious, often they are, because when we face change, change often brings with it increased anxiety. Nevertheless, there are some cognitive strategies that you can use that can help combat that feeling of anxiety or feeling that you might be out of your depth. I've mentioned that kind of defensive optimism. That's an important ingredient. We also find self-compassion is an important ingredient. Self-compassion is self-kindness. This is where in a learning context, if you get an assignment back, and if you're like me, you're slightly perfectionist by nature, you want to do as well as you can, you're quite hard on yourself, then actually self-compassion is quite good. And students who do bounce back and students who are resilient, what they're good at doing is they practice this self-kindness. So when they get an assignment and they get some critical comment and they might be a bit disappointed, well, they kind of learn from that, and they kind of forgive themselves fairly quickly. They don't beat themselves up about that one. So self-compassion is this kind of self-forgiveness. You should practice that. You know, you're human, it's a learning experience, you're going to make some mistakes, you should make some mistakes because you are growing as a learner. What I've called here second wave coping, these are ingredients that optimists tend to use too. They tend to look at where things haven't gone well, you know, they don't always succeed. When they haven't gone well, they look at that and they say, okay, what 1 or 2 things can I do differently based on that failure, if you like, where things haven't gone as well as I hoped. So think about that. What one practical step could you take? Looking at the feedback you get from tutors, what 1 or 2 changes could you take practically when you next approach an assignment? Now, in this study, in this analysis for mental health, by a country mile, we would say in the UK, by an awful long way, the strongest influence on good coping was context control. So this is where you develop, when I say context, you're not born being high in control, but in certain situations, you can learn the skills to feel in control. So I'm saying that students who succeed are those who drill down on the strategies they need. What I said earlier on about referencing, time management, note taking, all that stuff. They learn that skill set earlier on so that they know in the context of being a student that, you know, they feel in control. Combine that with conscientiousness, that's a winning formula. Now, this is an odd one that you might think seems, it does not fit with common sense at all. But sometimes we call it not optimism, but pessimism. Sometimes pessimism can work. And we did measure pessimism in this analysis. And defensive pessimism, what that is, if you actually can cope quite well, you've succeeded quite well, and you've got a project that you've got to undertake, an assignment you've got to do, then actually not putting the pressure on yourself to achieve at a high level, but actually setting the bar low, that might relieve you of the anxiety of achieving at that high level and actually help you perform better. So what I did in this analysis, for example, I had a measure of defensive pessimism and of optimism, and I took out the people who are in the upper quartile of defensive pessimism, the upper quartile on pessimism. So people who are high on pessimism. I also got the people who are high in optimism. And the people who are high in pessimism, I then said, okay, which of this group are high on course satisfaction, which suggested to me that they had been achieving in the past because their course satisfaction was high. And which of these were high on anxiety, because defensive pessimism works well if you're anxious or you're in a situation which causes anxiety. So now I've got a group who are high on anxiety, they're high in defensive pessimism, but they have achieved well in the past. And I compared that group against those who are high in optimism on learning motivation. And what I found is there was no difference in these two groups. In other words, defensive pessimism is just as good a strategy as optimism is when it comes to learning motivation. So you might think about that one when you're dealing with situations that cause you anxiety. The but is, however, is that those who are high on defensive pessimism, they weren't as happy. Their satisfaction with life wasn't as good as those who are high in optimism. So optimism does seem to be an important ingredient, but that defensive pessimism, that might work too. Openness was associated with increased stress. You might think, well, that's not good, is it? Well, actually, it probably is. You need to experience some stress if you're going to grow. And you need to adopt a growth mindset as a student. That means you have to kind of see your potential, your talents as something that's untapped. You know, you dream big, the limits are limitless. You really do. You know, I see year on year students who discover talents, they discover abilities and creativity they didn't know they had because they have a growth mindset. So that means, you know, that journey to learn and discover, you'll experience disappointment, you'll experience some failure, you'll experience some anxiety, but they are just the growing pains of a growth mindset. Finally, last couple of points, looking at support in another context for mental health. Students who felt they could connect with others, whether it was recreationally through clubs and societies, and virtually, you know, virtually through clubs and societies when they were able to kind of contact in some kind of digital format, that did seem to help them. So if you're able to kind of network with other students, even if it's virtual, then that does have a powerful buffering effect on stress. The last one I wanted to mention here, the last finding, was that I looked at this conscientiousness, I drilled down in it a bit more, and we've got 3 lines here that represent people who are, the top line, who are high in conscientiousness, average on conscientiousness, low on conscientiousness. And what we can see here is that those high in conscientiousness, forget about the angle of the line, those high in conscientiousness, you know, their learning motivation is higher, period. Okay, so conscientiousness is good. But we also find it's a buffer. It helps protect you from the stresses out there that you might find really hard, that you might think they're a hassle, that might be difficult to deal with. We find that for those people who are high in conscientiousness, the more they rated experiences as a hassle, that had a fairly nominal influence. It didn't change their learning motivation very much compared to people who are low on conscientiousness, when their learning motivation dramatically reduced the more they experienced hassles. Okay, so the takeaways: develop your higher education learning skill set to increase your sense of control in the context as a learner. It gives your conscientiousness teeth, and that's a real winning formula. Network with other study buddies socially and recreationally. Support is a powerful buffer. Think like an optimist. Defensive optimism, I mentioned that one. You might also consider that kind of defensive pessimism if you're feeling anxious over a situation and you've tended to achieve well in the past. Accept that some anxiety, some stress, disappointments, they're growing pains if you're going to discover and expand and discover new talents and new areas of creativity. Try and make 1 or 2 small changes when you get feedback. Make those practical. Use primes in your workspace to make that an effective working area for you. And combat procrastination by breaking down the tasks into manageable chunks. And you can either do 1 or 2 things. You can either do the worst bit first, and then the rest will be a breeze, or you can start with the bit that interests you first, because if it interests you, you're likely to engage with it in an easier way. Okay, I hope that made some sense, and thanks for listening. And I'll hand back.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Chris. So I pass the session. So right now, I'm going to pass this session to Dr. Judith Wiley. Over to you, Dr. Judith.
Okay, I'll just try to share my screen here.
Right, we can see that.
Oops, wrong end. All right, okay, sorry. Okay, yes, so you can see my screen. Okay, so I'm Judith Wiley. I'm one of the lecturers here in the school, and I want to just give you a short introduction to psychology at Queen's. But first of all, I want to tell you a little bit about the university itself, just in case you don't know too much about Queen's. So Queen's was actually founded in 1845, and it's actually the 9th oldest university in the UK. And so across the university, many subjects are really highly rated. You know, many are in the top 200 and several are in the top 100 in the world for their subjects. So it's a moderately large university, nearly 25,000 students. And importantly, and this is nice for the students, it's one campus, and our students who are joining us later will be telling you a bit about the campus, I'm sure. And then another important point is that Queen's is a member of the Russell Group, so it's a research intensive university. So you might be wondering where Queen's is. So Queen's is in Northern Ireland. And so Northern Ireland, as you can see on the map here, is in the northwest of the UK. And so it's the capital city of Northern Ireland, and it's about 1 hour flight from London and about half an hour, 40 minutes from Edinburgh. So it's really well connected as a city to the rest of the UK. And you can see from some of the statistics here that there are lots of really positive aspects about Northern Ireland. And again, Ria and Arjun, I'm sure, will mention some of these. But one of the benefits that students tell us about is the low cost of living in the UK. So Queen's is Belfast is a really excellent value for money city. So you've got Russell Group University, but a low cost of living, so much cheaper rent and food prices and so on than other areas in the UK. And you can see also then that it's rated highly in terms of safety and the quality of life. So lots of very positive reasons for wanting to come to Northern Ireland and studying in Queen's and Belfast. So to tell you a little bit about the school then, so the school has about 800 students across undergraduate and postgraduate courses, and currently about 10% of these are international students. And this population is growing both in the school and in the university. And we have about 60 lecturers supporting our courses. Psychology is part of the Faculty of Engineering and Physical Sciences. And that you might find that slightly surprising in terms of the placement of our faculty, or our placement in the faculty, but our colleagues collaborate with and teach with members of staff across the university. So we collaborate with other staff members in education and in nursing and medicine and computer science and music. And so as a student, you may have the opportunity to get involved in those cross-disciplinary projects. So what is psychology? So lots of you are interested in studying psychology, and you probably have a reasonable idea about what psychology is. But just to remind you then, psychology is a scientific study of behavior and the mind. So as psychologists, we're interested in how we think and learn, how we develop and how we age, how we differ from one another, and how we interact, collaborate, and sometimes conflict with each other. And the researchers in the school, so the lecturers who will be teaching you, are interested in all of these questions, and indeed much of the research that we carry out actually addresses lots of these aspects. So I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of our programs. So we have 2 undergraduate programs, so a 3-year BSc in psychology, and then a 4-year BSc in psychology with professional placement. So the only difference in these 2 programs is the 1-year placement, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And so both of these programs are accredited by the British Psychological Society. Then we have 3 master's programs. So MSc in Applied Developmental Psychology, MSc in Clinical Health, and then an MSc in Psychological Science. And so this psychological science course is a conversion course. So this is for students who already have a degree in another discipline, but they'd like to move into psychology. Then we have a doctorate in educational, child and adolescent psychology. So this is for students who want to train to become an educational psychologist. And we have a doctorate in clinical psychology. And then, of course, there's the research PhDs. So during your undergraduate studies with us, you'll be studying all of these areas of psychology. And these are the areas that are set out by the British Psychological Society for accreditation purposes. And so built around these areas, and indeed, subsuming these areas then are skills and methods that you need. And so Chris has already mentioned some of the important skills that you'll be developing, but of course you'll also be developing skills in terms of statistics and research skills and research methods and so on. So these are the main areas that you'll be studying. And this then leads on to the accredited degree. So I mentioned already the degree is accredited and will provide you with the graduate basis for chartership. So when you graduate, you're eligible for membership of the British Psychological Society. One plus point of our degree, and this is not offered by many other universities in the UK, is that we give you free student membership during your studies with us. So that enables you to receive the monthly publication from the British Psychological Society and really keeps you in touch with what's happening in psychology across the UK and indeed more internationally in terms of how the discipline is progressing, what are the debates within the society, where is the discipline likely to go to in the future. So that's a really important and useful bonus for students. So in first year, you'll be studying 3 modules, and these modules give you a sound foundation for further study in psychology. Here we have a look just at the typical week in first year. So about 10 hours of lectures, 2 hours of lab class and 1 tutorial. And this then gives you lots of opportunities then for your own reading and private study, for group work, for completing your assignments, for gaining research experience with members of staff, and then for doing something called Degree Plus that I can mention later. Second year then is further in-depth study of these core areas. And then in third year, then you complete a research dissertation and you have an opportunity to take a number of optional modules. And these are just some of the examples of modules that are currently available. So you'll see there's quite a range of areas. And so staff would be teaching in their areas of expertise here. So you're going to be taught by individuals who are researching in these areas and who are really keen to share their knowledge with you. So I mentioned that we have an optional placement year, and you can have this, the BSc Psychology with professional placement. So this would involve taking a year out after your second year. So this, you would have a year of paid employment. And it's not possible to enroll for this course when you start, but you can switch to this course during your second year if that's something you'd like to do. And so we will help you secure a placement. And this placement can be local in Belfast, it can be elsewhere in the UK, or it can be an international placement. So you might be wondering about the teaching and assessment methods at Queen's. And so we use a range of ways of teaching you and encouraging your learning. So we have traditional lectures, we have seminars, we have lab classes, we have tutorials, we have field trips and practical experience. And so the latter two there, the field trips and the practical experience, are more relevant for third year, where you're taking those specialist modules. And then we have a range of assessment methods. So students will be completing essays, projects, lab reports, presentations, exams, and again in final year, although also in the other years, but particularly in final year, a range of really quite novel assessments that really help you to get to grips with the material in those modules, and really to apply your knowledge and to demonstrate that you will be able to use this knowledge in real world scenarios. So a little bit then about our research. So we have 4 main research themes in psychology. And so you can see these here on the screen. And then we have a number of research centers. And as a student, you will have the opportunity, if you want, to get involved with research in these areas from the week that you arrive. So there are opportunities for students to gain experience and to participate in projects right throughout your degree. And so this, again, is a really beneficial aspect of the degree, and one that you should really try to take advantage of, because it really helps to develop your knowledge of psychology above and beyond what you're learning in your lectures and labs and tutorials. So I want to finish off by just talking a little bit about what we can do to help you to realize your potential. So as a school and university, we're providing really excellent pastoral and academic support. And there are a number of methods of support listed here for you. So ahead of year, who can answer questions about your course. Each of you will have an advisor of studies to help you make academic choices. You'll have a personal tutor who you will see really very regularly. You get to know that person quite well, and they will really be able to help you reflect on your learning and give you feedback on your work. The lecturers and coordinators of the modules you'll be taking will be happy to discuss the content with you and answer questions. For international students, we have language support that's specifically tailored for students on your course. So we will use your coursework as examples and ways of supporting your language development. We have an international student group, and the students may talk about this. We also have a buddy scheme for international students, and then a peer mentor scheme. So all students can and do have a peer mentor in the year above them that they can talk to. And then the university provides a wide range of support as well. So I think that I probably need to give the time over to the students here. So I'm just going to skip over my slides here then, and just we can save questions for the end if you want. You can ask questions directly, or you can email me if you think of a question afterwards that you'd like to ask, or perhaps if we run out of time. Okay, so that was just a very quick run through psychology at Queen's, and I'm going to hand over now to the students.
All right, so we proceed with the student sharing session. So hi Ria and also Arjun. All right, you want to start first?
I think we should let the more experienced person start first.
Am I wrong to assume you mean me? That would
No,
be really...
yes, definitely
Okay,
means
cool.
you.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Ria. I'm from Penang, and I moved to Belfast when I was 18 to start my BSc in psychology. It was a really amazing experience, but let me give you a little bit more information about me. So I finished in 2019 with first class honors, and I was super happy about that. I also won the Spirit of Psychology Award. And then I moved to Amsterdam, to the Universiteit van Amsterdam, to do my research master's in communication science, which I actually had my graduation ceremony for yesterday. It was very fun. And I am now currently starting my PhD. And my PhD title is Behavioral Consumer Psychology and Sustainability Marketing. So that's just a little bit of information about me. It's actually super nice to see Judith and Chris. They both taught me in my first and second years, and it's so nice to see them and hear their voices and remember my time at Queen's. And yeah, Queen's is just a really amazing university. I took some notes while they were talking. Judith said how well connected it is to UK. Yes, but it's also so well connected to the rest of Europe. It is so easy to travel and so cheap. I traveled to Rome for like £12 one time. It was amazing. And in fact, yes, Belfast is a very, very cheap city to live in. Because it was so cheap, I was then able to travel so much, experience so much more, because I was able to live within a budget. And what's also very nice is that Queen's gives you many opportunities to work on campus with the university. And this is a really, really cool opportunity because you're getting work experience that looks really good on your CV as well. So for example, Judith also mentioned the buddy scheme. In my final year, I was the buddy scheme intern. I was working 16 hours a week there, so organizing all sorts of events for international students. I also was the ambassador for the School of Psychology. There were just lots of opportunities to get some good work experience that was outside of an academic context. But as Judith also mentioned, there's loads of opportunities for research as well. What else did I write down? Oh yeah, Judith also mentioned about Degree Plus. That's a huge thing as well. We also have the Millennium Volunteer Scheme. I don't know if it's still there, but I did get that, which was really nice. And with that, you can really integrate into Belfast and into Northern Ireland, which I think is really important as an international student, because sometimes you get a little bit stuck in an international student bubble and you don't fully experience the city you're living in. And I think that's one really good thing that the university and the School of Psychology try to do. They make sure that you actually know Belfast and people from Northern Ireland, and you get outside of this little bubble. And I really, really appreciated that. Yes, there are so many international students in the university and in the School of Psychology. You meet people from all over the place. So nice to see different people from different contexts and backgrounds. You learn so much more that way as well. What else did I write down? Yeah, and the university and the School of Psychology are just very in tune with what us international students need. It's a very unique university in that sense. I always felt very well taken care of, felt very listened to, and there's also an amazing students union at the university. So as a student, your interests are always represented and you're always heard, and there's so much support. If you have any problems, as you can go to your pastoral care, you can go to your tutor, but you can also go to like a whole range of different people throughout the university at all levels. And that's one really, really good thing about Queens. And yeah, just I think about my 3 years at Belfast, and I love living in Amsterdam. It's a great city, but I miss Belfast every single day. It was such a beautiful place to live in, and I just absolutely love being there. It was such a unique experience. And yeah, there are also so many Malaysians in Belfast as well, so that's also a nice little plus point. Okay, I think I've talked long enough. Arjun, on to you.
Thank you,
No,
Ria.
thanks, Ria. That's
So
great.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can proceed, Arjun.
Yeah, no worries. Hi guys, my name's Arjun. I'm from Petaling Jaya originally, and I actually did my first year in Help University, if you're familiar with that. And I transferred over to Queens for my second year, and now I'm in my third year and my final year. So it's been quite the experience so far. The first year I was here, it was, right in the middle of COVID. So I'm very jealous to hear that Ria got to travel to all these places and I'm just stuck here. But, now things are opening up and it's been great to go around and just see Northern Ireland. And, that was the one thing that really sold me on Northern Ireland and studying in Belfast was that, you know, it's it's just so beautiful here and there are so many green spaces and lush environments. Definitely if you come here, take your time, explore the island. It's such a good experience and it has such a positive effect on your mental health as well, just taking time out in nature. um, Also, another thing that really drew me here was the low living costs. That was a big point that was made when the university was suggested to me, and it really is. And there are so many places where you can get top quality food and groceries that if you cook yourself, it's a really nice way to bond with people that you live with and share food, and it's been great so far. um, when I came here at first, this was the first time I was traveling out of Malaysia alone, and it was exciting, but also really frightening as well. And also now I'm in a new environment and a new learning style, and that was really something that I had to deal with and cope with. But I have to say, as both Chris and Judith said before, the support systems in Queens are really top notch. Especially, they are very uh, caring towards international students and all their needs as well. So, with the international buddy scheme, and we have our own international group as well within the university, and it's been really nice to sort of talk to people from different parts of the world, and sometimes even from the same part of the world, and just sharing your experiences and supporting each other. And you get that as well with the local students as well, with the peer mentoring schemes. It's been such a great time, getting to know people from here, and letting them show you their country, and you share parts of your culture with them as well. And that part of it really helps support your time here, and makes it a bit less lonely. uh, One other thing that I have to say is, when I came over, I you know you start to miss home, and you can Skype your family, but you can't Skype your food. So it was really nice to see that there's such a wide range of international stores here, and we have there's like three huge Asian supermarkets just like right in the city, just like 20 minutes, 10 minutes walk from where I live. And it's been so nice to get familiar ingredients that would be considered quite exotic here. And with that, been able to cook Malaysian meals, and people from other parts of the world, they cook their meals, and you sort of get this sharing experience, which has been really great. And that kind of bonding that you get really makes miss home less. And yeah, what the final point I want to make is that with all the support in place, it really helps boost your confidence. And as Rhea said as well, there's so many opportunities for work experience and even research experience. I got to be a part of so many research projects here in the university. And as well, with the student staff ratio has been great. And, I also got to have Chris as my tutor for last year and also my thesis supervisor for this year. And that's been a really great experience. And, all the lecturers really push you to do your best and support you. And, we actually have a paper that we're working on. I'm working on with Chris and another one of my tutor friends. And, he's really pushed us and taught us so much and gave us all these skills necessary. And we're actually working on, getting this project published. And we're presenting it at a conference in Help at at the end of the month. And, I never thought I would be able to do that, and it's been such a great opportunity, learning opportunity, and to get the experience as well. So everything has been great so far, and I've really enjoyed my time here, and I can't wait to, graduate.
All right. Thank you, Ria. Thank you, Arjun. So I'm sure that you guys must have a very having a very good time there in Queens. So we seems like running out of time, but we can still have times for question and answer. So do anyone have any question for Chris or Judith or Ria or even Arjun?
Someone asked about the International Buddy Scheme. I can give a little bit of context about that.
Sure.
Because I was the Buddy Scheme intern in 2019. So it's basically like a service that the university provides for you. Each international student is matched up to either a local student in their second year or another international student. And you are given, it's about 5 international students per older student, and they kind of guide you. They're your friend. They tell you what you need to do, and it's a very like informal context. And when I was running the program, we had about 1,000 to 2,000 students participating, and we organized monthly events. We did a whole bunch of things with them, and it was just very, very fun. And it takes place during the Freshers Week, so in the first week of September. No, in like the first week before you start classes. So that's when it is, and then you just meet a whole bunch of people, and it's really awesome.
I just want to say too, we were remarkably blessed to have Ria and Arjun as international students, and the international students they bring an awful lot to the party as students, and they contribute an awful lot, and they enrich the department. So the school are real winners from the experience, as well as the international students, what they get from it too. And I kind of feel like I'm an international student because I'm not from Northern Ireland, I'm from England. And I think of Belfast as probably the friendliest city around. It's the only city I've ever been around where people you don't know who are walking by will occasionally just say hello to you, which is very unusual. So there is a nice vibe. It is very friendly, and it is the safest city in the UK.
Yeah, I think when I joined this education industry, the first training was from Queen's Belfast, and they keep on telling that everyone there is very friendly. So other than that, is there anyone have any question? Maybe to Chris or to Judy?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we actually have an international buddy scheme in our school now as well. So we actually will, within the school itself, that we will link international students up with other international and local students. So it's both a university and then a psychology specific scheme.
All right. Okay, seems like, okay, meanwhile, if there is no, am I mute? Okay, meanwhile, if there is no question, maybe like you can type later. Maybe we just enjoy this short clip about JM education.
JM Education Group is Malaysia's leading overseas study specialist. Since 1992, we have sent more than 15,000 students to over 100 institutions around the globe. With our headquarters in Subang Jaya, our network of another 8 offices cover major Malaysia cities in Penang, Ipoh, Petaling Jaya, Sri Hartamas, Cheras, Johor Bahru, Skudai, and Kota Kinabalu. Applying to overseas institution can be daunting. Fret not, we provide professional education counseling to smoothen your journey along the way. Our experienced counselor will assist you to find an institution that suits your qualification and needs. We are always ready to guide you with your further study plan. From application to enrollment, you don't have to worry about forms, paperwork, or deadlines. We will assist you. Here's what we can also help you with: choosing a university, applying and taking entrance exams, applying for a visa application, accommodation arrangement, pre-departure briefing, and much more. Do you know our services are completely free? Yes, you heard that right. If you are looking for premium education services, book a free consultation with our friendly counselors at JM Education Group. JM Edu.
Yep. Okay. So I think there are more questions. Okay. So Arjun has already replied the question.
I can sort of comment on the placement
Okay.
question.
Sure.
So I'm currently doing a placement module, which is just half of the semester where you go into placement, but there's also the option to do a full year of placement. And I've known people who've done the full year of placement in sort of departments in HR. Actually, I know someone who did it in EY as well, in KPMG. So they have bases here, so that they've said that that's been really a great experience, and it looked fantastic on their CV, and they're so buzzed about it. There are also people who have a lot of them have done placements in the healthcare industry as well. So working as mental health support officers and helping elderly people, cope with basically taking care of them and like sort of sitting with them at home. And I'm currently doing my placement in a primary school. So that's been really fun, and sort of, getting to know children and young people and sort of teaching them about mental health. So that's been a really great experience as well. But that's just a few of the placements that are available.
Thank you, Arjun. So any other question from the floor? Thank you, Hujan. So maybe Arjun, you want to share a bit about your how you cope with study during pandemic, study online and everything.
I think the best advice I would give when studying online and in a pandemic is, you're already so isolated from everyone else. You have to make an effort to connect with other people, because that's what is really lacking in online learning, is the connection to other people. And it was noticeably when we switched, I noticed that like a massive drop in my motivation. And so, to counteract that, you got to take action to connect with people in your course and even with your friends offline and, in a non-academic setting, and just connect with them and, keep each other motivated. The support aspect of the university is so important, and you got to work towards sort of cultivating that and getting that back online.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, so just to let everyone know here that benefit of applying with JM at Nicholas. Okay, let me just proceed with this and then we continue. Why is my screen so this? All right. Right. So there's a question here. What makes a good personal statement and how much does it contribute to our acceptance in the Belfast University? Maybe Judith or Chris want to answer this?
Well, I think a good personal statement will demonstrate your interest in psychology and your enthusiasm for studying psychology. So, you know, so if you can show some understanding of what the discipline is, and then, you know, how you would want to use the knowledge that you will gain in the degree. Now, you don't have to know what you're going to do after your degree, and indeed you might even change your direction once you're exposed to some areas of psychology. But I think it's just by showing your you know, your enthusiasm and drive for studying psychology.
Okay, thank you, Judith. So let me just continue this. So basically, if you apply through JM Education Group, we can help you in terms of personal statement checking. So basically, we go through your personal statement and we advise, and also we can help you in terms of amending or advising what should you put in your personal statement. And also we are able to waive the UCAS application fee. All right, and we also give you free UK SIM card. All right, just before we end this session, just to share with you that we're gonna have few upcoming JM events, which is we're gonna have Australia Info Week from 25th to 29th October, and then on the 27th October, we will have Oxford Sixth Form webinar. This is mostly for foundation and A level. And also we also have on the 10th of November, Trinity College X University of Melbourne panel session. So if you're interested with all of this, you can always contact us. So here are our offices. All right. So maybe you can screenshot or anything. All right. So if there is, got one more question. Let's just check. Where is the chat? It's from Filch Dinsey. Hi there. I don't know if this question is applicable. Is there a research opportunity that dives into how epigenetics and psychology are related? So, Chris, you have the answer for this, or Judith?
I currently not directly. I mean, there may be. I mean, the research opportunities are obviously changing, you know, all the time as staff develop their projects. So I'm sure there will be something that will interest you. You know, once you would arrive here, because there are our colleagues are